Debt recycling. A lot of people have different views about what debt recycling is. And only a couple of months ago, Bryce, we talked about it on the pod. But Julia, in terms of the common definition that you had for debt recycling, why don't we start there in terms of what most people talk about and what we think it is, and then we'll just branch off from that and have a bit of a discussion around debt recycling.
Well, it was interesting when we first talked, all three of us had a sort of different definition of what it is. And the basic idea of using your equity in your home to invest, don't have a problem with that as long as the loans are set up all right. But I'm very suspicious of some of the times I hear the word debt recycling used, and it implies that you can turn non-deductible debt into deductible debt. So that's what concerns me, and what people need to understand, that you can't do that through debt recycling. And I'm worried that it's dressed up as something like that. They don't actually say it, but you think that's what you're getting into, and you get into these products that are, if they say it, then the ATO's got them, dominant purpose of a tax benefit, or that they're getting you into products that you've got to buy or higher interest rates. It really worries me when I hear the word.
Julie, you've spent a lot of time sort of unpacking some of these rulings and the ideas and some of these concepts that come along. It'd be fair to say that you are the person who is always bringing a calm approach to it, and you also armed with Part 4A, which we'll talk about shortly. But I remember Julie, when I first got into the gig, I was in my early 1998, so I was 23, and I remember it was buzzy. Like that, we used to get together, and we thought we had this little underground sort of movement going on where let's see if we can outsmart the tax department. Let's see if we can turn some stones over that no one's ever turned before. But I think now, having been involved in it this is now my third decade, it's fair to say that Part 4A is the ATO's weapon for any little underground groups that are trying to outsmart them, right?
Yeah, it's all about the dominant purpose. And if the dominant purpose is to get a tax benefit, in other words, increase your tax deduction, well, it's void from the tax office. Many years ago, there used to be a bit of an argument that the dominant purpose is to pay your home loan off sooner, but that didn't fly. So, yeah, it's basically strict nexus. What was the money borrowed used to buy? And if you can't repay that loan because you've lost your job and you have to capitalise interest or something like that, borrow elsewhere to pay it, then that's all right, because it's not the dominant purpose of the tax benefit. It's just to get the debt paid off. But when you get to a strategy that that's marketed, that's structured to increase the debt that's deductible, your dominant purpose is that tax deduction for the interest, isn't it? So
that's right, Julia. And I think for the community who don't know Julia's backstory, Julia has been around. She's been a leading tax specialist in Australia for decades in this space. She's written a couple of great books on this topic. And in one of those books, you were referencing when there was a ruling around when interest was deductible, and obviously when interest on interest and those types of things. So why don't you tell us the little backstory in terms of what was originally a ruling and then what has changed? Because you gave us a little clue in what you were just talking about then.
Yeah, well, Hart's case was the case, and it went through, I think there were 3 cases, and the ATO kept on losing. So in their true funded, unlimited taxpayer-funded fighting fund, they just kept on appealing until they won. But in the end, because at one stage one of the judges even said, well, what sane person wouldn't pay off their home and delay paying off their
investments?
Debt.
Yeah.
But in the end, it's like with the pride of a poker player with a full hand, they went to court the final time and said, all right, we admit it. Capitalised interest is tax deductible. Part 4A, there's a pamphlet for this loan that said do it for the tax benefit. So the dominant purpose is the tax benefit, so you've lost it. So yes, capitalised interest is deductible, but only when you can say that it's for a reason other than a tax benefit.
So here we are talking with our tax accountant. So this is fun for Bryce and I in terms of having these conversations. So, and this is why we want to go off on these little threads and have these little extra conversations. So based on the original dominant purpose, which is I wanted to pay my home loan off first, that was then squashed as well because, that for a period there, that was, okay, my dominant purpose is I want to pay off my home loan before. And then eventually, to your point, the ATO kept pushing. When roughly was that, because I still hear people out in the street and spruikers and all of that talking about, the Hart Case, and you can claim interest on interest and you can do this debt recycling and those types of things. So roughly when was that? Because it is important to start getting that message out into the community that sometimes the tax laws change.
Yeah, well, we're talking about around the year 2000. Thanks for that question without notice, Ben.
Welcome to my world, Julia.
but I mean, you still hear it talked about, and so to your point, the interest on interest. If you're effectively trying to increase your deductible debt to pay off your home, in other words, the rent that's coming from your investment properties is fast tracking you paying down your principal place of residence, i.e. your non-deductible debt, and you're letting your debt increase, and then you're trying to claim the interest on that interest to accelerate that debt payment down, that's also been squashed as well, hasn't it?
That's right. That is a scheme. That is an arrangement with the dominant purpose of a tax benefit, isn't it?
Yeah.
What other reason?
Well, the dominant purpose is to pay off your home quicker, but the ATO doesn't.
Try that. I tried it to death, Bryce.